Now, generative artificial intelligence has revolutionized how we interact with technology, offering innovative tools and solutions. However, this technology also introduces significant risks, particularly to children. Now, South African social media law expert Emma Sadlier has recently issued strong warnings regarding Grok. Now, Grok is the AI chatbot on X, formerly known as Twitter, and it's specifically highlighting its role in a surge of digital crimes and sexual exploitation. Emma's comments also come amid anger over Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok's image creation feature, which has been used to create sexualized deepfakes of women and children. A social media law expert, Emma Sadlier, now joins us to discuss this matter further. Emma, thanks so much for your time this morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for talking about this very important topic.
It certainly is, but I suggest we rather start by explaining what Grok is to the uninitiated before we delve into the controversy itself.
Absolutely. So Grok is an AI chatbot that is embedded inside X. So we all think of it still as Twitter, but X is a platform which is still very, very popular in South Africa. And what we're finding is that Grok is being used, to fact check. You see a tweet and you're not sure if it's true, and you immediately reply at Grok, is this true? Or at Grok, what do you know about this? Or at Grok, who is this person? And then for a while now, we've seen what I call image-based violence on Grok. Now, sometimes that's the sexualized content, which I think we're going to talk about, but it can be as simple as sending a message, a picture, and saying, remove the person who's not the most beautiful in this picture, or remove the person who's not listed in the Epstein files. So there's been those kinds of prompts being sent to Grok. But the big worry is the extent to which people are still able to ask Grok to undress, to bikinify, to nudify, to turn children, particularly women, but all victims, into these sexualized poses. So it's non-consensual image-based violence, and it is a huge problem, and the world is clamping down on it. But I'm afraid Grok seems to be just doing its own thing.
And then the question, of course, about real-life harassment and how are these AI deepfakes used and how do they actually trigger those real-world harassment incidents?
So I think what we're experiencing is that these deepfakes have become so accurate now that really they are indistinguishable from the real pictures. And so what we're seeing is people being seriously harmed, dignity infringements, reputation infringements, infringements to privacy, because they have been abused on the Grok platform. And if I can just take you back to the first question you asked me, it's like, how is Grok different? Because we've got these undress apps, we've got nudify apps. I'm involved on the ground, first responder in so many cases. And there are lots of even teenagers being arrested because they're using these apps to create non-consensual, sexualized, private content. And so that is something that's been going on in the background. But the big difference between Grok and some of those other chatbots is that all of Grok's answers, its output, is public. So if I ask Grok to take a picture of this child, bikinify it, cover it in, I don't even want to say these words because we're on television, but this is what is happening. Then the answer that Grok provides doesn't just come to kind of my private inbox, it gets published for the world to see. So when this really hit, which was in early January, I was inundated with South Africans contacting me saying somebody has taken my very professional, innocent profile picture from LinkedIn, for example, put it into Grok and turned me into effectively a porn star. And what can I do? And in simple terms, the answer is that the law enforcement in South Africa treats that content as if it is real. So there is no difference in the legal consequences that follow whether something is deep fake or it's real. So with the children, we're seeing criminal charges of creation of child pornography, distribution of child pornography. There are two new laws in South Africa which are so important, and they're pretty new and a lot of people don't know about them. And that is that if somebody shares a private sexual photo or video of you, without your prior consent, that's a criminal offense that can attract a 300,000 Rand fine and 4 years in prison. So that's if I send my boyfriend a nude and he shares it. But it's also if that person uses these technologies to create deepfake content and shares it without my consent. So that is a serious criminal offense. And then under the Cyber Crimes Act, if somebody shares an intimate picture or video of you without your consent, that is also a criminal offense. And we're starting to see the prosecutions happen.
And Emma, that's pretty clear, where there is obviously sexualized images. But what about someone using your image to use that for false advertising, where people have lost millions of rands even in buying into schemes that have been put out using people's images to sell products that were fake?
Yeah, it's such a huge problem. And to be honest with you, the big tech companies are behaving in a criminal way by not shutting down these fake accounts. Every single day, I get contacted by people who are saying that their image is being misused for the purposes of scams, getting people involved in cryptocurrency scams. And, I've had a high profile client call me to say she's actually received death threats because, on the basis of her endorsement, encouragement, promotion of a particular cryptocurrency product, these people have invested their life savings, they've lost all of their money, and now they're coming after this person whose image has just been used. It happens, and it happens to all sorts of people. I mean, it happens to famous people. Your own Leanne Manis, this has happened to a lot. But there's a professor of urology, an unbelievable woman at the University of Pretoria, and people used her used her photos and videos of her where she's been giving academic lectures, using these deepfake technologies to turn her into an advert endorsing not just like scam products, but actually dangerous pharmaceutical products. And people have had serious consequences as a result of using these fake pharmacological products. So it's a huge problem. We also see it in extortion cases, sextortion cases. It just takes sort of catfishing to a whole new level. And the other thing we're seeing when it comes to image-based violence is horrible bullying. So somebody photoshops my face. Imagine I'm a vulnerable child. They Photoshop my face onto a sumo wrestler's body. It's circulated, talk about how fat I am. I was dealing with a case last week in a high profile boys' school, which has a sister school. And these kids had taken this picture of this boy, male learner at the school, put him using these deepfake technologies into the uniform of the girls' school and were circulating that saying, this is the new student at this school. Really horrible bullying content. Now, there are legal consequences, and I have to remind the viewers, particularly with children, you have to make sure your children know about these laws, because I am finally seeing children being arrested literally weekly because of harms that they are committing on their cell phones. Criminuria, when somebody seriously infringes your dignity. We can use that in most image-based violence cases. If somebody is sending threats, harassment, there are legal consequences that flow. And I think that it's very important that before we let loose our children on these platforms, that we're having very serious conversations with them about how things can go wrong, and how that from when you're 12 years old, you can be arrested for these criminal offenses. And I can confirm, because I'm on the ground, kids are being arrested for these offenses.
And Emma, speaking to culpability, you touched on it, but what about these companies like Meta, where, for example, I have a profile and someone sets up a fake profile using pictures that they may have found of me on the internet. I've contacted them, and they simply have not done a thing. And people are subscribing to whatever is being sold on this fake profile. So what sort of culpability accrues to them?
So one of the biggest problems is the extent to which these big tech companies have been protected from being liable for the harms that they are causing. And there's actually the most fascinating case that's going on in America at the moment, where finally, for the first time on Wednesday last week, Mark Zuckerberg had to sit in a witness box and be cross-examined in front of a jury about the harms that his platforms have committed, particularly against children. So the big problem is that so far these companies have been protected by this piece of law in America called the Communications Decency Act, which simply means they're not legally responsible for the content that they host on the platforms if they've put there by third parties. That's different in just about every other country in the world. In every other country in the world, if you have the ability to delete content, you're legally responsible for it. And so it's a very, very controversial law. It has to be removed. It's been the reason that these companies have been allowed to get away with what they've got away with. But it should be such an easy solution. If somebody is creating a fake account in your name and is causing somebody else harm, there should be a mechanism that you can get hold of these companies and that they remove those platforms. But to be honest, the companies simply do not care about their users. They have prioritized profits over people for far too long. And finally, it does feel like the world is waking up about the extent to which these companies have behaved in such a criminal way. And we're starting to see some changes. Just last week, Keir Starmer in the UK announced that these big tech companies are going to be given a 48-hour deadline. If they find out that there is sexualized and non-consensual content, AI generated, on the platforms, they will be given 48 hours to remove that content. Otherwise, there's going to be hell to pay, and they're going to have to pay big fines. The big problem in South Africa is that these companies are not here. So to get them to be accountable to South African laws is tricky, which is why we need to find the users behind this abuse so we can take legal action against the users and not the platforms.
And given the anonymity under which they can basically hide, that also makes it difficult, I would imagine, Emma. But unfortunately, we are out of time. Yeah, what an interesting conversation, and hopefully will be picked up, for a longer discussion. But thank you so much, Emma Sadlier, who's a social media law expert, speaking to us about Grok and risks linked to its image generation, especially with the sexualization of people and children. So children are also people. Okay. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. That's where we're going to have to leave that one.